Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 8.13 King's Coat. We are back. Hello, Darnell. It's just Darnell. Oh, wait, I feel another presence. This is the first in history we have a guest on Aetheral Space.
Yes, I'm finally here. I got in here. I broke the door, and I'm finally here.
Darnell, what is this? Explain yourself.
You kicked my baby. You kicked my fucking baby.
Let's explain anything.
Corgo, they are the first person to meme themselves into an Aetheral Space chapter. And I've decided, and this definitely isn't me foisting my bad memory off on you, but Corgo, why don't you give us a recap of the last two chapters?
That's a bad idea.
Why don't you tell us what's been happening?
Darnell, I don't remember anything.
This says a lot about Aetheral Space. No, I'm kidding. It's just been a while since we read it.
It's too much.
Okay, so
a whole week.
If I recall correctly, Dragon broke out kind of with North's help, but really like the commander guy was one of the red Panacea people, and he was like, yeah, and he's like trying to recruit Dragon or kill him or study him or some shit. He's really
figure
weird.
him out, yeah.
Yeah, Atoy Muzazi was doing something. I think he was helping Hasaya, but like he doesn't know Hasaya's fucked up. But then Marie was like, "Why is he being so mean to my Atoy?" And that's about all I remember.
Yeah, Atoy was rushing to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill them."
Don't worry,
I'll hold them off.
And the Red Panacea guys were like, "Ah, ha, this is abortion mission. Let's go."
Abortion
mission? Oh my god!
Yes, the false baby.
This is one way of putting it.
All right,
I mean.
Conservative religious Midwest crowd just fell off Aetheral Space.
Goodbye.
Why they gonna make Aetheral Space political? It wasn't in our story.
You know, I gotta be honest, for all the themes of like genetics and like countries and like war, it's actually probably one of the least political series I've read, funnily enough. I feel like it's very shonen. Or maybe there's politics and I'm just too stupid to sense them. But it feels like a very generic fascism is bad, you know? It's not like super heavy politics.
I mean, we had that one planet with the sponsors.
Oh, yeah. Hey guys, this planet's been sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
They're not.
They were like an oligarchy or something.
Yeah.
But that's enough that's enough reminiscing about the past. It's time to read Aetheral Space, right guys?
Oh, yeah.
I wish I brought my water in here. Atoy Muzazi kept his... Oh, sorry, what was that, Corgo?
Oh, I said, wait, didn't you? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
Why didn't you? It's true.
I forgot. Atoy Muzazi kept his hand on his blade as he walked into the empty function room, his footsteps echoing in perpetuity. He could only tell that this had been a function room by the sign outside. Any furniture in here had long since been moved out, the only survivor being a lonely-looking table in the corner. A security camera watched from the opposite corner of the room, just next to an open door. That door was open because someone had stepped through it. Someone coming from the opposite direction as Muzazi. The one he'd come here to riveting script. No, I'm kidding. The one he'd come here.
Okay, that's the end of Aetheral Space, everyone. Darnell's trying to impress Corgo by being snarky.
I'm always snarky. That's the one thing I'm not doing to impress Corgo. This is not new. Dead Hand, their armor red, the letters bold and declarative. Tense, industrial steel covered their body, the hulking mass of it more suited to a spacewalk than a combat situation. And yet, the way they moved displayed no discomfort at all. Clearly, they were incredibly strong. A massive plasma rifle was held in the figure's hands, the barrel glowing with residual heat. Smoke gently drifted from its mouth up into the air filters. Through the porthole on the figure's helmet, Muzazi could see the faintest outline of a human face observing him. Marie followed Muzazi through the door, standing alongside him. Her eyes seemed resolute as she cracked her knuckles. But something about... Wasn't she with Hasaya? Is this like a small time skip?
Well, she followed. Yeah, she followed.
Oh. Yeah. But something about her seemed...
Corgo remembers.
I don't. If you remember so much, why didn't you do the recap, Corgo? But something about her seemed...
Wow, turns on Corgo so easily.
But something about her seemed yet distant, like her resolve was coming through habit rather than determination. Ever since they'd met back up, she'd seemed distracted somehow. Once the scenario was resolved, he would have to ask her about it. But right now, They had work to do. I'm going to put a comma there because it feels right.
I'm gonna say so, yeah.
The figures stopped their approach, maybe 3 meters away from the pair, and observed them carefully. There was the slightest modulated sound of breathing from behind the helmet. The repurposed still required air, then. That was good to know. I don't think we've met before, the figure said, a clear male voice forcing its way out of the metal. Names? Musashi drew luminescence and held it ready, narrowing his eyes. Hasaya had said these elite repurposed retained residual intelligence, but he hadn't actually expected them to speak. Still, if he was asked that question, honor bound him to answer. Atoi Musashi, he declared, adjusting his footing slightly. Special officer of the Supremacy. The Supremacy? Interesting, the armored man mused. Wait, should I be doing the voice for King guy?
Yeah.
The Supremacy. Interesting, the armored man mused.
Sorry, I had something in my throat.
Sorry about that. There was a little bit of panacea in my throat. He angled his body slightly towards Musashi's partner. And you? Marie's fists were clenched, her back hunched slightly. She was ready to pummel her foe to meet. Marie, she answered simply. Musashi drew his sword back, luminescence glinting in the light. I believe it's good manners for you to name yourself also now. For a moment there was silence and stillness, 3 bodies waiting for the command to move and kill. Then, with careful slowness, the man reached up and took the helmet off his head. Beneath was a face framed by long golden hair, orange eyes inspecting inquisitively. What makes a king a king? He asked. Musashi glared. I very much doubt that's your name. The man rolled his eyes. John Blair. Now tell me, what makes a king a king? Musashi furrowed his brow. What does that question matter? It is the only question that matters. I would hear your answer, Atoi Musashi, Special Officer of the Supremacy. I trust you have one for me. Musashi exchanged a glance with Marie, who moved her shoulders in the slightest shrug. After a second of consideration, Musashi opened his mouth again. A crown is warranted with strength, he said. Power is what makes a king a king. John Blair smiled, just slightly, his lips curling at the edges. I couldn't agree more. If that is your aspect, I see no reason for us to be enemies. Throw down your blade and pledge yourself to me. Hot anger rushed through Musashi's veins. Throw down his blade. Oh no, not luminescence. No, not his GF.
No. Not my girl, no.
Not luminescence, Chan. To ask him to do that was to ask him to abandon himself. Luminescence was no stick of steel. It was the shape his will and ideals took in this world. He could no more cast it aside than he could tear out his own heart. If that's the outcome you expect, Musashi growled, holding luminescence ready, then you shall be disappointed, sir. Blair sighed, but he didn't sound especially surprised, and with the barest of efforts he threw his rifle away, slamming it into the wall. I shan't let it be said I didn't give you a chance, he said, and with a shower of sparks he drew his own blade. It was a crude thing, more like a machete than anything else, intended to clear dangerous terrain, but with the strength of the repurposed and the angry red aether coursing through it. Musashi knew he couldn't take it lightly. Ready? Musashi asked Marie without looking at her, bracing himself for combat. Always. The two of them rushed forward, fists and sword ready to come down, and Blair waited for them to meet him. King's coat, he said. Alright, I'm going to pass it off to you, Tanhony.
Absolutely. Dragon blinked as he took in the gruesome display. Oh, he said, swallowing down the nausea. That's the face of God, then. It's kind of graphic. Ian continued to circle him, his tattered face still swinging from all of his temples. His eyeballs were still attached to that skin, nerves hanging limp like the roots of a vegetable. Closest thing he had to a visage now was the red lump of panacea inside his hollowed-out skull. Graphic, Ian intoned with a fluttering of his throat parts. Visceral. Extant. It gives me great comfort to know that God bleeds. The warmth of it on my hand provides great proof of his existence. Duran kept his hands behind his back as he took a step backwards, holding the Neverwire together as well as he could.
You could just put behind him as he took a step backwards.
Well, he's not stepping behind someone. That's weird phrasing.
Kept his hands behind him as he took a step backwards.
All right, yes. You see, this is what we call editing.
Yeah, this is what WriterBot's going to be like. It's just like minor spelling fixes.
North had snipped his restraints with some kind of blade, but Dragon wanted to keep the element of surprise for as long as possible. He gulped. So I take it you're one of those repurposed guys then? How come you're not going insane outside of the rest of them? Ian cocked his empty head. I could ask the same of you. Human technology pulls my mind to my body. What saves you, little man? Little fella?
Little guy?
You're just a little guy, Dragon Hadrian.
Human technology. Some kind of cognitive implant? His brain's been taken over, but something else has taken up the slack? Dragon didn't have anything like that. How was he still walking and talking then?
Because I'm dead boy.
Oh my god, Van said helpfully, bobbing into view from behind Ian's leg. Don't fall for it, the archivist said harshly, arms crossed on the other side.
It's not like I like her or anything, idiot.
This contaminant is a different strain from the red one, but I've no doubt we're being used too. As we are now, we're simply incapable of perceiving it. Don't trust that thing. Hand frowned.
Dead boys, so mean.
Don't listen to it, the archivist snapped. The cacophony inside Dragon's mind was silent as Ian spoke up again, that red glowing lump stirring into Dragon's soul. It was like an eye all its own, belonging to something else, something using this man as a window. A question, he said softly, hands tightening around the knife, demands an answer. The spectres of consciousness dissipated, and Dragon took a deep breath before he answered. Under the circumstances, he had no doubt the truth wouldn't satisfy the lunatic, so he did the next best thing. He lied. Cognitive implant, he said, shaking his head slightly to indicate it. Right at the base of my skull above the neck. I was in a bad accident as a kid, so my family shelled out for it. Helped with memory and motor function, that kind of thing. Ian took a step forward. What model is it? He demanded, voice buzzing through his skin. What make? No clue. My family took care of all that stuff. As long as it works, it's good enough for me.
See, that's clever because when you lie, you want to keep it simple. Because if you go way too hard on it, people know that you're being suspicious.
It's like, why do you know all this like encyclopedia shit?
Exactly.
I mean, how would he remember it if he was only a kid?
Side note, this may not apply if you're neurodivergent and love ranting about random details.
That was the way to do it. Detail was the marker of a lie.
Oh, you literally...
Truth came out in one or two... No, please. It was really smart of me to write it like that. Truth came out in one or two sentences, while falsehood just went on and on. So long as he maintained the right level of vagueness, he could make it out of this.
See, what happens is Tanhony has taken my commentary and he's made it Dragon's mind. So, like, you don't need me to read along and explain it to you.
Don't you realise what you've just said, though? That means that you're saying that you are like Dragon.
I am... Oh, no. No!
Whenever I want to refer to Darnell, I'm like, Darnell?
That hurts more than anything I've ever heard, that anyone would think I'm Dragon Hadrian. There's like a hole in my heart.
You said it. You said it.
Corgo said it. Now there's a hole in my heart. Just keep reading, Dan. Ow.
No.
Ian took another step forward, and as Dragon stepped back in response, he thumped against the wall. Nowhere to run. Just above your neck, he whispered. Show me. Let me feel it. Sure, Dragon said, angling his head to show Ian the back of his neck, doing his best to keep his tattered restraints out of sight at the same time. It's right there under my hair. Go for it. Ian took another step forward, reaching out with careful fingers. Dragon let go of the Neverwire. Gemini shotgun. Two blasts of rock speared out of Dragon's bright blue aether and through Ian's body, landing with deadly precision. The first severed Ian's outstretched arm, sending it flying up into the air, flipping end over end over end. The second hit him right in his equivalent of a face, like a massive fist smashing into that lump of red aether. A huge chunk of his skull was demolished by the strike, but the panacea persisted, pulsing harder and faster like a panicked heart, but remaining intact all the same. The impact sent Ian sliding back over the smooth floor, his braced and tensed body making him look like a still figure being manoeuvred by a child. He reached for his tattered face with his remaining hand and flipped it back to cover his skull again, the ill-fitting skin like an empty curtain.
I love the description you're using in this chapter. Makes it so much more vivid.
His other arm began to regenerate, joints forming with uniform cracks. You shouldn't have done that, he growled. It was unkind of you. As Dragon had expected, dismemberment wasn't much of an obstacle for things like this guy. Removing or destroying the arms and legs would only serve to disable enemy for a few seconds at a time. The lump of panacea, though, that showed more promise. Ian had moved to protect it, suggesting the consequences for him if he didn't.
You shouldn't have done that. That was unkind of you, Dan, when I make fun of Doctor Who.
Simple game plan, then. Stop him from moving and then smash that ugly mushroom in with his boots. Hey! Pan cried, annoyed, but he ignored her.
I could sense the panicked wait for Corgo.
It was Dragon's turn to take a step forward. He regretted it nearly immediately. The arm he had severed landed, hand still grasping, and latched onto his shoulder. Dragon went to rip it off with an aether-infused hand, but too late. Angry veins of red panacea writhed from underneath the limb's skin, worked their way out, and made contact.
Oh, are Pan and her sister about to have a battle?
Well, maybe first we will have some popcorn, Darnell.
Okay. I really wish I had that water on me, my throat. Ooh. Marie kept count. She'd ripped this man's arms off 4 times now. She'd relieved him of his legs 3 times. She'd even torn his head away twice. None of it had left so much as a mark. The man called John Blair continued to clash with a toy, their blades meeting again and again at speeds impossible for human eyes to track, blizzards of sparks erupting from the clash of their weapons. Marie hung back on the sidelines, prowling like a predator, waiting for an opportunity to present itself once again. The moment Blair's attention was fully focused on a toy, she'd leap in and attack. Dismemberment accomplished nothing but distracting him for a few seconds, and his skill was such that he could fend off additional attacks in the time it took him to regenerate. If she had free rein here, she'd assume a form that could more easily overwhelm him and slice him to pieces, but she wasn't willing to risk it. If John Blair saw her doing that and fled to tell the tale, things would get much further out of control. So here she was, vanilla human, the only adjustment she was making to her body being on the inside. Harder knuckles, more flexible arms, invisible enhancements to give her an advantage. Dismemberment wasn't the answer, so the next best thing would be restraining him somehow. Regeneration wasn't possible if something was already occupying that space. Actually, that is curious how that works, because he could regenerate in, a pool, right?
Well, panacea, it's a bit more limited. Marie could probably do something like that.
I know, but I'm saying, if they chop off an arm and throw him in a pool, could he grow the arm back in the pool, or because there's water around him, would he be unable to?
Well, when I say, occupying that space, water
you mean
much of an issue.
You mean, when it's a tiny room, if you put him in a little lockbox?
Well, it's if I stabbed you in the arm with a knife, you can't regenerate through metal, you could regenerate through water.
Okay. What if you chop the head off and what if you cut him cleanly in half and then put him in 2 lockers, like school lockers?
Well, he would try to regenerate, the bit that has the brain in it, and he'd probably, either crush himself or break out the locker.
Perfect. Sorry, I totally lost my place with that hype. Okay, here we are. So the best bet would be to impale Blair somehow and pin him in place, giving them time to pursue a more permanent solution. It was a good plan, but still. As Blair parried and deflected, Marie's gaze drifted to the aether construct floating behind him. King's Coat, he'd called it. The name was fitting. In terms of appearance, it was like a cross between a coat of arms and a golden clock, a massive hand slowly drifting between 4 emblems. First, at the top, a glowing blue iris. Second, to the left, the same eye but gold. Third, a gaze pitch black. Fourth, a white eye with a melting crown in the pupil. It was like a coat of arms and a golden clock. I'm trying to visualize this. Massive hands slowly drifting. Do you mean like a clock hand?
Yeah.
Okay. The hand lingered on each segment of the clock for about 15 seconds before moving clockwise on to the next. Right now it was hovering over the blue eye, and Marie was watching carefully. John Blair's parrying. Oh, I'm gonna guess it's cogitant for that one. One of them's probably I don't know. They're probably all different abilities. Wow, nice. The difference would have been hard to spot by a normal human, but it was definitely there. He was predicting a toy's strikes more effectively, moving in ways that caused his opponent to slow down and become more easily manageable. Like this was a puzzle, not a death match. He was fighting just as a cogitant would. That was the secret of King's Code. It allowed John Blair to copy the skills of whatever subspecies... Oh, sorry, I got it. Of whatever subspecies the clock was hovering on. Murray grinned to herself. All she had to do, then, was wait for John Blair to become crownless. Then she'd rip that smug smile right off his face. The building was on fire. The land was on fire. The air was on fire. Dragon could see it. In the instant the hand had touched him, Dragon found himself standing somewhere else. A world aflame, shades of red oppressive reflecting each other like a crimson kaleidoscope. The ruins of cities melted and welded together, forming a grand staircase up to the bleeding stars. Their putrid ichor flowed down like rain, pooling into great lakes that collected in the sky like planets of their own. Someone stood beneath them. At first, Dragon thought it was Pan. But no, this was not Pan. The dress she wore was stained red, her hair bleached white. She had Pan's face, but it was strangely unfamiliar, more clearly defined, in such a way that it was too real, like someone trying to convince you much too hard of something, a con in human form. She stared down at him with narrowed, bloodshot eyes, like he was a piece of shit that had fallen into her path. "You are not mine," she said. Whew. That was King's Code. Tanhony, what was your fun fact this week?
My fun fact for this week is I forgot to do any, so I'll come up with it on the spot. This is going to be canon.
Yeah, all these are.
Well, yeah.
You have 5 seconds. You have to learn to improv. Come on, just say what comes to your
Before
head.
the slipstream number 1 that we had originally, Skipper did own 3 prior starships. So
What were they called?
that was the slipstream number 0, the slipstream number -1, the slipstream number -2.
That's actually so good. That's so funny. I wonder if they were like, "Why is it called the -2?" Don't worry about
Well,
it.
this retroactively.
It's alpha. All right. So I thought that was a pretty good chapter. I felt smart that I guessed the cogitant thing, but I think you kind of made it pretty obvious with the symbols and like what was happening. And that's kind of a neat way to write, in a way that makes the reader feel smart, but you're kind of leading them to that conclusion. I will say, I'm wondering like how you feasibly fight this. What I'm thinking is it's a fungus, right? And it's regenerating. So my number 1 thought would be, oh, it's weak to fire. But I don't know why no one else has come to that conclusion yet or tried it. So I'm wondering if there's like a catch to that. But I would think, oh, burn it out. And burn so they can't regenerate faster than you're burning them. But no one's done anything fire related yet, so we'll see.
Aren't they using plasma rifles now?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of...
No one's used plasma rifles in this fight. No, they've only used swords and Aether abilities. Only the Dead Hand are using plasma. Only the Dead Hand have used plasma rifles. None of the heroes or people fighting them have used plasma weapons.
What about the time when they only getting to the safe place on the card?
Oh yeah, well, North used one there. North hero is sort of.
But he didn't hit them, right?
Well, he was shooting them, but he didn't kill them.
Yeah. I mean, like, you have to set them properly on fire, not, like, burn through them with fire. Like, they have to be...
Well, it has to be a fucking good fire. Like, there has to be, like, incineration.
Right.
Yes. Explode the planet.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is, like, I'm curious about that. But, what are your thoughts on the chapter, Corgo?
I loved it. I'm so happy that we finally have pan number 2.
Because... Dead boy?
More mushrooms. Yeah.
I love Pan, man. I hope she sticks around.
Yeah, I hope.
Alright, well, I'm going to end this episode off for now. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Bye!
Tan, say bye to the audience.
Goodbye!